Hey guys, I'm back with the Great Airport Mystery, and we are on chapter 11. Frank and Joe darted after Williams and succeeded in intercepting him before he reached the rear exit. A wild struggle followed. The boys and their burly opponent crashed to the floor in a mass of entangled arms and legs. Mr. Freeman, having recovered from the blow he had received, rushed over to give his support. Williams was exceptionally strong, but the 3 against 1 was too much for him. "That's enough," he panted. "Don't hit me again." He dropped and lay on the floor like a whipped dog. "You'd better do some explaining," Frank said angrily, as he and Joe stood up and brushed off their clothing. Joe grabbed the envelope and extracted several pictures. "The aerial shots," he exclaimed, and handed them to his brother. "I've nothing to say," growled Williams, trying to catch his breath. He sat up and ran his hand through his hair. "Who stole our camera and films?" Frank demanded, glaring at their captive. I don't know about anything being stolen," Williams insisted. "Okay, have it your way," Frank declared. "Maybe you'd rather talk to the police." The young sleuth walked to the telephone and began dialing the number. Williams turned pale. "No, wait," he pleaded. "I'll tell you all I know. Honest, I will. Don't call them." Frank put down the phone. "Go ahead," he ordered. "My name isn't Williams. It's Richard Tyson," the man said, taking out his wallet. He displayed his driver's license and a few credit cards. The boys examined the cards and found the man's address was the same as that of the apartment house in which Lieber lived. "Then who's Williams?" Frank asked. "Williams rents a room across the hall from my apartment," Tyson answered. "Early this morning he asked me if I would pick up his pictures when they were ready. He told me to use his name. He explained that the pictures were confidential and not to let anyone see them. I'm sorry now I ever agreed to do it. I should have suspected something phony." He got to his feet, brushed himself off, and looked at the boys nervously. "I'd like to leave," he said, moving towards the door. "Not until you tell us everything," Frank said. "Who stole our camera?" "I told you I don't know." "Does Williams live alone?" "No, he rents a room from Mr. and Mrs. Lieber. The Liebers seem like nice people. I think Williams is Mrs. Lieber's brother." The Hardys did not disclose that Mr. Lieber was already one of their strong suspects in the case. "Well," Frank announced, "you can leave, but we're going with you to your apartment. We want to check your story." "By all means, come along," Tyson urged. He seemed eager for a chance to prove his innocence. Frank asked Mr. Freeman to put the aerial pictures in his safe until the boys called for them. "We don't want to risk their being stolen again." The brothers took Tyson with them, explaining that they would bring him back later to pick up his own car. As they drove, Tyson volunteered the information that Lieber was an airplane mechanic and standby co-pilot. As a result, he was away a lot. In fact, he often slept at the airport. In a short time, the group arrived at the apartment house. Tyson unlocked the main door with his own key. As they climbed the stairs, Frank said that he would like to find out whether Lieber was at home. Tyson pointed to the door of the man's apartment, and Frank knocked. The door opened, revealing a stocky, handsome woman with a tremendous amount of blonde hair. "Hello, Mr. Tyson," she said, seeing her neighbor. "Is Mr. Lieber home?" Frank inquired. "No," she responded. "My husband has to fly very early tomorrow, so he decided to stay overnight at the airport." "Is Mr. Williams home?" Joe asked. "He's not here either," the woman said. "Is it anything important? Can I take a message?" "No, thank you." Mrs. Lieber eased the door shut. Tyson led the Hardys to his apartment across the hall. There they met Mrs. Tyson, a short, middle-aged woman. She invited them to come in. Frank casually conversed with her, selecting his words in such a way that the woman was not aware that he was probing for information. She told the young sleuths that Mrs. Lieber was a very secretive person who seemed extremely frightened of her husband. She tries to forget her worries, Mrs. Tyson said, by always going to the movies and to parties. Poor thing. The Liebers never have any company. Momentarily satisfied with Tyson's story, the Hardys drove the man back to the camera shop to pick up his car. He said little more to shed any new light on the mystery and was obviously relieved when the boys drove off. When they reached home, Frank and Joe discussed the information they had gathered that day. I'm convinced, said Frank, that Lieber and this Williams are mixed up in the Stanwide case. So far, nearly all our suspects are company employees, Joe commented. How does this fellow Williams figure in? It's possible that he's part of the racket, but working from the outside, Frank suggested. The boys recalled Jerry Madden's remark about Lieber's being Peterson's pal. They wondered if this meant that the chief pilot himself was involved in the thefts. And it doesn't surprise me that Art Rodax fits into the picture, said Joe. I knew he had a secret reason for not wanting us around the plant. At that moment, the telephone rang. The caller was Randy Watson. The pilot said that he had managed to rent an aircraft suitable for a long-distance flight from an operator at Lockwood Airport. This field was about 200 miles from Bayport. I've already been there and flown the plane back, he said. She checks out fine. We'll be ready to roll any time in the morning. Good, Frank answered. Joe and I will be at the airport early. We can't risk missing Peterson and Lieber's departure. At dinner, the boys packed some light luggage. Mrs. Hardy and Aunt Gertrude tried to hide their anxiety when they heard the coming flight was to trail Peterson and Lieber, but an expression of concern crossed Mrs. Hardy's face. Don't take any unnecessary chances, she begged, and keep in constant touch with us. Frank and Joe promised to do this. They assured the women that the trip was only routine and that they would be away not more than 2 or 3 days. 2 or 3 days? Aunt Gertrude exclaimed. If you catch those thieves the first day, why can't you come home? That's where you belong anyway. The boys grinned, and Joe said, Why, Auntie, the longer the chase, the more fun. Fun? Nothing, she stormed. A lot of danger, unnecessary danger, for a couple of growing boys. Miss Hardy's tirade ended only because she was called to the telephone. Mr. Hardy, on the other hand, made no objection to the trips. Best of luck, boys, he said. The following morning, the boys started for the airport as soon as dawn broke. When they arrived, the Hardys spotted a sleek, highly polished twin-engine turboprop plane parked on the Ace Air service ramp. That must be the plane Randy rented, Joe exclaimed, pointing. My, what a beauty. Wish I could fly her. Frank grinned in anticipation. It sure looks as if we won't have any trouble keeping up with Peterson in that. The boys put down their bags and approached the plane for a closer look. Just then, Randy Watson came running out of the operations buildings. Hey, fellas, he shouted. Come here, quick. The young detectives ran to meet him. What is it? Frank called. Something wrong. I just tried to phone you at home, Randy answered, but you had already left. It's about the Stanwide cargo plane. What happened? Joe asked. Peterson and Lieber left hours ago, Randy said, trying to catch his breath. They took off late last night. And of course, that's the end of chapter 11. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you next time.